as designated by the Secretary of State, Secretary Cesar Perales. And we're here for the ninth meeting of the Amistad Commission.
I can hear fine.
Okay,
I
great.
can hear fine as well.
Okay. They
Wonderful,
hear you
thank
clear,
you.
Tanika. Okay,
All right.
we just started recording.
All right. Well, we're going to wait a couple of minutes just to see if any, we do have some more board members that are going to be joining us by phone. So we'll wait a couple of minutes for them to be able to dial in, and then we'll get the meeting started.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Edison.
How are you? Edison, hi. Good. Yeah, I remember you. Sylvia Long Lewis. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah.
Last is on vacation.
Oh, Laz is on vacation. Okay. That's allowed.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, guys.
Hi, Edison. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
Good.
Hello, did someone just join us on the phone? Oh, no, we got disconnected.
No, that's okay. Hi.
Hi.
I decided to just walk in. Hi, I'm
morning.
Reva.
Reva,
Nice to
hi.
meet
Nice
you.
to meet you, Sylvia.
So I'm going to wait about another minute because we are supposed to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members to call in, maybe 6. So that's the bulk of our attendees. So I'm hoping that those individuals will be able to call in within the next few moments. So if you can just bear with us for another minute or so.
While we're waiting, I have a question. Is Sylvia there right now?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hi, Sylvia, what is it that you do? I'm noting that it says President of Narrative Network.
Yes, that's a media company, and we specialize in multicultural audiences. We do public relations, events, and things like that. We produce documentaries and also publish a blog called Yo Narrative. We focus a lot on what we call the migration and immigration stories. So we're all about stories, and so that's about it in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Did you if you get a chance, look at my website. Right now I have a piece about whether we should get rid of Columbus Day and swap it for Indigenous Remembrance Day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm focused on the people of color in the Americas.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What is your website? What's your website?
It's called www.yonarrative, YONARRATIVE. I'll give you my card.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just did a radio show on BBC Radio, and it won an Academy Award.
Hello,
It
we
was
have
about
2
lynching.
people who joined over the phone. Good
Thank you.
morning.
Here's my card. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Do you have a card, Reva? Okay. What's your name again?
My name is Reva.
Reva. Okay. Are you going to sign this?
Do we have additional individuals who are on the call now besides Patricia? No? Okay, well, I would like to call the meeting to order. It is 10:39, and my name is Tanika Frostamusa, as most of you know, and I was recently designated as the chair from the New York State Secretary of State, Secretary Cesar Perales. And my role is to facilitate our meeting and get us back on track with regard to the work of the Amistad Commission. I do want to say that there have been previous chairs. The last chair was Nita DeSalvo, who left the department a couple of months ago. And so I am now holding the torch to continue the very important work of the Amistad Commission. So this is recording as our 9th board meeting. And I want to first sort of give an overview of sort of where we left off. Our last meeting was December 9th, 2013. And in that meeting, there was discussion about the deliverables that the Commission is responsible for. And those deliverables include some information that we're going to talk about later with regard to the actual draft report that touches on some of those deliverables, but organizing a way to make sure that we're able to fulfill our legislative mandate. And with regard to that, there were some subcommittees formed to address some of those, to address the deliverables. One of the subcommittees was the website redesign, and I know Edison will be able to talk to you a little bit about what has transpired since our last meeting with regard to the website and some updated materials that were on there, and we're obviously still working on keeping that updated. And then there was the Educational and Cultural Resources subcommittee, and that committee was charged with listing resources with regard to what do we have here in New York State that can benefit the educational experience as it pertains to African Americans in our educational curriculum. And the last subcommittee was the Educator Input Subcommittee, and that's what one of our deliverables, which is to do a roster of individuals who would be willing to share their materials and expertise, and we would compile a list of those individuals to make it available to those individuals in New York State, and particularly the educators who would be using these individuals who have expertise in certain areas, so that they can share their knowledge and particularly the African American experience from their perspective. I thought I heard there might have been an additional person on the phone. If it is, could you please tell us who you are?
This is Narita Bonet-Owens, Syracuse.
Oh, wonderful. Good to have you. We're just getting started and sort of doing a recap of where we left off in December. And so while I neglected to do sort of a roll call to make sure that we have everybody recorded and documented as being here. So I will start here in Albany. I've introduced myself, Tanika Frostamusa, recent designee of the Secretary of State.
I'm Mary Teresa Struck from the ARC Inc. in Troy.
And so if we can go ahead in New York City.
Okay, hi, I'm Sylvia
Hi.
Wong Lewis.
Wonderful.
I'm Reva Narula. I'm an Excelsior Fellow at the Department of State, assisting Tanika.
Edison Albin, Press Officer, Department of State.
And on the phone?
Narita Bonet-Owens, MrsOwens.com, Cultural Ventures. I'm in Syracuse. Patricia Poland, New York State Education Department.
Okay, great. With regard to the subcommittee structure that we have, and we're just, like I said, picking up from where we left off. I know it's been quite a while, but Edison, can you fill us in on what has transpired with the website recently?
Yeah, well, the website's looking really good because we've gotten a lot of articles in. So we've included resources in it. We've started doing upcoming events, which would like to get more of that because it's important to have to really get events there. Whatever is happening throughout New York State, it's important, whether it's happening in a library or an arena, Coliseum. We'd like to know about it and we'd like to post it. So that's important to continue. And we've done a lot of work with posting articles. So great stories. We've worked on the stories with the rest of the committee members. Sylvia, you've been very helpful. So I think we would like to continue doing more stories. So we encourage everyone to provide us with any information or any relevant stuff that where we could, whether it's anything historical, any anniversaries, any special event that's being held, that we could create a story around it. During a specific holiday, or anything that you think might be of interest to the curriculum. So right now we're very excited about the fact that it's the website has actually built up to a lot of different visuals. We have images along with stories. So it's looking, quite filled up as, compared to how we started at the very beginning. So, so one thing that we want to encourage is give us much more of events that are happening throughout New York State. And we want to work on really creating a more robust calendar of events.
Good.
Once we have the events that we're getting, we want to be able to establish this calendar so people could go in and see what's going on throughout the state with the calendar.
Yes.
Other than that, I think as far as we're concerned, I think that we'll continue working on the website. Right now, IT has a freeze on making any major changes because what's happening with New York State, NewYork.gov, basically, the state wants to. It's really overhauling its website, and we want to make sure that all of the state websites are very similar. So to that end, we're able to make changes and edits to the site and post new things, but we cannot really reconstruct the site. If we like to really shift it completely, we will not be able to do that until we get everyone on the same page, and that comes from the governor's office. But if there are some ideas and some things, and there's always room for growing and changing things, we'll continue looking at what other stuff we could do to the website to kind of change it, maybe make it much more visually appealing. Like I said, the homepage right now, it's got a lot of stories, a lot of information, events. We could definitely work on making it more of like the homepage and more visually interesting. Bigger pictures, maybe sliders, but those changes cannot be made until after we move into content management, which is a new phase where it'd be easier for us to even make those big changes. But for now, we'll continue working on this. It's probably going to be next year. We'll start making even bigger changes. We'll definitely have more opportunities to make a bigger change to the website. But we're good. We just we'll continue working on stories, on calendar, posting upcoming events, and any relevant information that comes from the state. We'll also post it, whether it's press releases from the governor, any bills that are coming up that are relevant. So yeah, I mean, we'll welcome everything and anything that you have. We'll consider it. We'll walk around we'll create a story for it.
Great,
so
thank you. And I was on the website, I think a couple of days ago, and it has articles as recent as this week that are posted to the website. So if you haven't taken a look at it in a while, you can see that there's some updated content that continues to be put on the website, and I thank you, Edison and Laz, for keeping that up. I think in the future, one of the things that we can use a website for is to actually publish and make it available to the public what the board is doing, the commission is doing, particularly moving toward our drafting a report, which we'll talk about, that we can make available to the public on that website. So it's definitely been very valuable, and thank you very much for your work on that. Any other
I just wanted to,
yes.
well, as the chair of the website commission redesign with Laz and Edison, I just want to express my gratitude for how far we've come with the site. I thought that we could add, since this is coming up right now, work with Veterans Day, that I thought some story ideas surrounding the African Americans' participation from the American Revolution to the Civil War to all of the wars and those kinds of stories. Myself as a genealogist helping African American find their ancestors and whatnot, a lot of, and even you see that on the TV show that Professor Gates does, that he is able to find a lot more of history besides slavery. So, and I know we've heard this in our board meeting last time, that we want to talk about the slavery time, but we also want to talk about, the African Americans' experience through all the wars, through all of the development of our country. So that's one thing that I thought. And also in the news, I think that maybe you guys recognize too, several books have been written now that show the business side of slavery. They talk about the economics, how the first capitalism, the first American economy system was born out of slavery. All of the tests that they used to, they learned a lot about capitalism from the experience of slavery. That's another thing that I thought that we could include some of these textbooks that are now coming out, and I'd be happy to send you some links. Great. They've been reviewed in the New York Times, and I thought they were very interesting in that it showed that it wasn't just the black people going through slavery. It was the white people contributing to it, and as everybody likes to say, oh, I was not part of slavery, but we all were part of slavery, and I think that this commission could really bring forth that truth, that it's not just the black people who were poor victims of slavery, it's that everybody was part of this because that's the way the country was built. And the other part about I wanted to bring out is that I'm part of a group called Coming to the Table, and it's white people and black people who have discovered slavery in their family. And it's a place for reconciliation and healing. And it became very clear to me from some of the conferences that I've attended that it's white people are just as impacted by slavery as black people, and they need healing too. They lived through segregation, they lived through lynchings and all of those kinds of horrors of slavery, and they need to be involved in the conversation too. So
that's a good point. Mm-hmm. And if we could get Sylvia, is that something that is a website or any information you have on that?
Yes, I thought that I could, send some information to Edison and Laz about when there are these healing conferences and workshops for white people who say, well, what happens when I go through my family records and I discover that because these are people today, our age, they're saying, oh, I just discovered in my great-grandfather's will that we owned 5 slaves. It was in our property records, and they didn't realize that their families were even involved in slavery because they're from Rhode Island or Maine or something, and they thought it was just a Southern thing. So this organization that I've been a part of for many years is called Coming to the Table, and it's a nonprofit volunteer group. It's, no funds or anything involved in that, but it's just like a place, it's a safe place where you can have conversations about this, and they have conferences and meetings, and it's just kind of to bond with each other and to share information, because a lot of times these people have information about black families, and that's the problem with slavery, is that families were cut off and you are looking for your family, and it may be that my friend Julie in Maine, whose family owned maybe my friend who's looking for her family. So it's really good to have these dialogues between white and black on this question of slavery, and I think it would help our country heal from the horrible racism that we've been experiencing, since the beginning of our country.
Yes, this is James Turner. Concerning the point just made about the political economy of slavery, there's a very recent book put out by one of our young scholars here at Cornell. It's called The Half Has Never Been Told.
That's the one. Yes.
I thought you might.
Yes, that's the one I'm referring to.
Edward Baptiste.
Mm-hmm. The half has never been told.
The half has never been told.
The half, H-A-L-F?
Yes.
No, half, H-A-L-F, yes.
Okay.
The half has never been told. Slavery and the making of American capitalism. Edward Baptiste.
Wonderful. We could definitely add that to the website as a resource.
if you can
And thank you,
compile
Sylvia, for your additions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I will compile a list for Edison and Laz. But we were, like wanting to get the whole
Absolutely.
board to kind of submit
Absolutely.
lists of stories or
Yes.
exhibits and things like that.
And James, you just mentioned that if you have any other titles, please send them forward to Sylvia, and then she will forward to us. Any of you guys, if you have any, and like as I said before, stories and any ideas, but now that we're referring to this books, send us whatever information you have and send it to Sylvia, and then we could work to post it.
And
Okay.
I also want, this is Maria Boneowen speaking from Syracuse. I also wanted to know, in terms of these different resources, we're not just talking about books. There are also a lot of other links that might be included, such as current cultural resource surveys. I think I've talked before about the importance of the Freedom Trail, particularly here in New York,
Yes.
which is the overall comprehensive look at people, events, and places which have been linked to the Underground Railroad and African American life, also known as the Freedom Trail. And here where I live in Onondaga County, we've already done a preliminary and relatively comprehensive cultural resource survey where we had an academic historian do the research, do the authentication, and what the preliminary findings were is there is about 750 sites in Syracuse and Onondaga County alone that are related to the Freedom Trail. So when you're trying to make the point that the African American experience is larger than enslavement, and you want to underscore African American success and achievement, you really can't go around the question of the Freedom Trail, which is folks who were manumitting and emancipating themselves prior to emancipation.
Exactly.
So we need to be mindful in terms of those kinds of resource surveys, perhaps being linked, as well as contemporary legislation. There's our congressman here, Dan Maffei, for example, has put forth legislation to create the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park in Auburn, New York. And there's also a companion piece, a component part to that that's coming out of Maryland. And this particular piece of legislation has been introduced. This is about the 5th or 6th time in a decade. So we're trying to get it done again and thinking that this is a great time, considering that Harriet Tubman's 100th anniversary of her death was the calendar year of 2013. And trying to use those equities to our advantage. So again, in terms of the public domain, making sure that people are connected and tied into things that are happening right now that they can get involved with in terms of letters of support and petitions and just be aware of certain things. So I'd like to add that to the discussion.
Can I just make a suggestion on the website under the resources section? And please feel free to totally discard this, but would it be helpful to categorize the types of material that we're putting on there so that it looks like more of like an archived list that people can, so if they want to learn more about the history of slavery in America, they can go and they can see exactly what sorts of resources we have up there that pertain specifically to that subject. If they want to know about, the African American history in STEM, they can, that kind of thing, in education, in the sciences, etc. It might just help to provide people a more directed area to go to when they want to learn about a particular subject, but it might also be too specific if you don't want to be too specific about
I think as we develop and share the resources, we can definitely work on making sure that it's organized in a way that is most helpful and useful to the public. I think the important point is that as commission members, the resources that you are privy to will be helpful to us, and you guys are in the field, you're on the ground, the things that are going on. So that would be helpful if you can, shoot those things over to Lass or Edison, And we can keep the website updated based upon the information that you share with us. And obviously, we are aware of things as well that we can put on there, but I think just your expertise and what you bring to the table will definitely help us to have a website that is very informative and current and very useful to the people here in the state of New York.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I cut you off. It's a
ahead.
good idea, and it definitely should be pursued. Tabs on different topics,
Right.
subjects, and so when you click on that tab, you'll hit all the information, all the articles, anything that's relevant to that. So we could work on breaking down them, as you said, the important topics that
Right.
are relevant to the community. What we want to see, whether it comes from education, historical.
There might be overlap too. I mean, you just want to make sure that people, when they're scrolling down, don't miss something because they think
Right.
it's.
And then once again, that the whole thing will happen when we start working on the overhaul, when we could actually work on redesigning the site in such way.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we could begin with ideas, and we could start saying, okay, what are the categories that we really want to highlight here in this website, as far as so we could start designing something without really implementing it until all this changes really occur, and then we could then we just continue pursuing that. But definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that the website may do well to have almost like two major parts to it: the K-12, New York State core curriculum kind of piece that would have the resources and things of that nature, and then the lifelong learning, more public domain kind of section. So
That's a good idea, right?
Lifelong learning, you're talking about starting, the point of departure with lifelong learning would be the higher education piece, the post-secondary piece. You're talking about professional development. You're talking about continuing education. So I think that sometimes those fields are looking for something a little different in the K-12 core curriculum.
Great, that is a good point. Is there any update
I'm speaking about that,
sorry.
Obviously from my vantage point, which is as a subcommittee member of the Educational and Cultural Resources Subcommittee, and that's more of our focus in terms of the public domain and the lifelong learning continuum.
And is there any update from the Educational and Cultural Resources Subcommittee?
Well, I think that our subcommittee probably we need to spend a little more time together as a subcommittee, but there are a few things that I just personally had in mind, one of which I think I've already alluded to, which is the Freedom Trail. I'd like to see that expanded, and by what I mean expanded is come up with a short list of maybe 6 to 12 more counties who are willing to step forth and have these cultural resource surveys conducted in their county. Because those cultural resource surveys really serve as a foundation and jumping off point when you're talking about the cultural tourism map and you're talking about developing heritage tourism. So when you work with, your groups and your community and you bring in your academic scholars and they're able to do the research, do the vetting, get everything documented so you're not in the realm of folklore. You get everything academically documented. You have the survey, and that serves as the basis in the county. So I'd like to see, we've done one here in Onondaga County. They've done a survey, I believe, in Oswego County, perhaps Madison County. But we'd like to see that expanded to the next 6 or 12 counties in terms of the Freedom Trail for a foundation. Also incorporating new academic research in the field of African American studies, again, into the lifelong learning continuum. So, for example, when you're putting together the visual African American timeline, making sure that that timeline reflects the most current thinking and research, whether that's coming from the new books or the new resource studies or what have you. Also, the question of funding. Very important to obtain the funding for the work of the subcommittee, Educational and Cultural Resources, which I think is tied into phase 2 of doing the development of the cultural resource map and enrolling that out. And then I just think it's important to continue the work of the commission, going beyond this implementation of the preliminary recommendations and maybe looking to extend the work until at least 2020.
Yes, and we'll talk about the report and what we're thinking in terms of getting that moving forward, because as you can see, that report was drafted in 2010. I think the last I sent around the last reiteration of that report, which was never officially published. It was never finalized, and obviously there's quite some time has passed since that information was put into the report. And so what we'll do is discuss, how can we pick up from that report to get something done, particularly highlighting the work of the commission since it's been in existence. And I'm hoping that we can get something that we can work with by the end of this year, and sort of take it from there. But is there anything else from the Educational and Cultural Resources Subcommittee before I move to the educator input? Because I do want to say that we have done work with regard to one of the deliverables, which is to compile this list. And I think of individuals who are willing to volunteer their resources and sort of gathering what's out there on our website. And I think that's a perfect place to get this information. And I think moving towards making sure we keep that updated and add more to it. I know there's a lot more out there that we can do to beef up that aspect of the website.
Well, I think that we need to explore our options in terms of that volunteer expert piece. Maybe there could be some kind of form developed that could be put on the website, and either people could come into the volunteer expert category either by application, in other words, applying themselves, or perhaps through recommendation. But I think that, again, using the website as a recruitment tool for that piece might be helpful.
No, that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, it's a good
Thank
idea.
you. Mm-hmm. So having individuals go to the website, fill out a form about what they do, what they can offer, and we can collect that information on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it can be however simple or however upscale. I mean, if someone just wants to fill out the basic form, and then of course by way of vetting, maybe they could have 1 or 2 references or 1 or 2 letters of support, or maybe they want to send us a short video clip of what their talk would be about. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but I just think that would help to drive traffic to the site. So that you could say, if you're interested in this, or somebody goes out to do a talk in the community, they can refer them back to the site.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea, but you think that would be something, Edison, that we could do, that you guys could do a press release about?
We could definitely work on something like that.
Yes. To let the public know that we're trying to get the commission back in gear and that we're welcoming to people who would like to be part of this journey with us to inform the populace of the knowledge about, the state and the people and everything. And the commission's work.
That's definitely doable.
Yeah.
And
one of the things that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that we can, the Department of State can take a stab at looking at a draft of a form that we could present to the commission to get your input about what you think is relevant, but we can certainly start that by drafting something that will be available possibly at our next meeting.
Okay.
That's
and
great.
this is
Yeah.
still Nuria speaking. One other thing I'd like to say about that is, with the form, in terms of encouraging support of the work of the commission, as well as asking people to get involved, if it is appropriate, perhaps we could ask our assembly folks to be mindful of the form and of the process, and perhaps they'd be willing to link the form to their website or do a blurb about the form and the process in their constituent e-newsletters or however it is, or their tweets or whatever they do to communicate with their constituents. Because I know for me, I wouldn't have a problem whatsoever asking the assemblyman in my area to do that.
Okay, we will take that suggestion under consideration and figure out how that may be accomplished. So that is a good point, and thank you for that idea. So I would like to talk a little bit, I know we're moving along here, about the 2010 draft report that I hope you all have had the chance to look it over. And I will say that I had been in communication with Patricia Poland and the State Education Department about sort of where we left off in terms of this report. Were there any updates to some of the recommendations that were posed in the draft report, and how can we sort of bring it up to date so that it is, it highlights what the commission has done in the past, but also anything that, as a result of the commission's work or suggestions that may have been implemented by SED during that time period. So I would like to have Patricia sort of go over some of the things that I had asked in terms of an update from some of the things that the State Education Department was involved in during the drafting of this report a couple of years ago. So Patricia, can I ask you to provide us with an update on those things?
Sure, I can provide an update. It's kind of like the good news, bad news story here. The good news is that, so as you can see from our minutes of the December meeting, here in the
Can you speak up a little bit? It's sort of hard for us to hear you here in Albany.
It's
Would you be able to?
over a framework.
I'm sorry. Hold on for a second. Would you be able to speak up a little bit? It's a bit. It's not
Sure, is it better? Is it working okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. So here at the department, we have taken a look at what is being taught in social studies as well as how it's being taught in social studies. And you'll see from the December meeting, the integration of the African American experience throughout the curriculum. It no longer is just a focus on slavery. In fact, there's a drug in every, it weaves the story all the way through, which really does go along with the component in the report itself about the, I'm sorry, my brain just went crazy, infusion, because certainly we have done this infusion with our work on the curriculum. That's the plus side. The unfortunate negative side is that there had been work done here in the department by my colleague Joanne Larson, who has since retired, and the electronic files are not accessible to me. I checked every which way, and a lot of the work was, she had it password protected, and even when I spoke to Joanne herself, she doesn't recall what her password was that she used. And when I talked with my IT folks, they're like, we can't do anything to break this and break into it, because it is what it is. So that's the negative side. Let me just say there are other things, I guess, I think I wasn't necessarily expecting to be called upon because I sent you the report.
Yeah, I just, let me just say that, Patricia, with regard to
Studies Framework, which is now posted on the Engage. You will see across various grade levels. In the 4th grade, when they're doing their state and local history, in their 7th and 8th grade, when they're doing U.S. and New York history, and when they revisit again in the 11th grade of the U.S. history. Across the board, there's all kinds of opportunities for students to be learning about the African American experience. Hence the notion of responding to the notion of infusing. So that was the other thing. Oh, and there was a question with regard to the student survey, and again, on that one, I tried digging through here to see, like, if we had the raw data from the original survey, and I'm not locating that at all. One of the things I do want to comment about was the discussion with regard to the survey of the cultural resources. I think that would be so wonderful to have, because one of the other things we've been charged with here is tapping into the cultural education resources as much as possible. And therefore, if the work is done and is hosted on Amistad, I can refer teachers to that location. For example, with the Onondaga County work that's already been done, that would help them work with those local cultural resources, because again, our emphasis is to try to get both at the 4th grade and at the 7th and 8th grade, having the students experience the local resources that are right there. Not to mention also like encouraging the parent participation over the summer months. There was a different person who had suggested that perhaps we can eventually be looking to, in addition to like the summer reading programs that the department currently sponsors, that perhaps we could be looking into the summer travel program, that linking, as we mentioned before on the commission, linking the history and making it very evident that there's all types of resources that are right here in our state that people are not tapping into. And that, unfortunately, the downside also is the fact that when I've been talking to teachers and supervisors and principals across the state, the notion of field trip has gone in terms of the budget that don't permit any, hardly at all. But at least if people are aware of what's there and can be shared with the parents, then hopefully we can encourage that exploration occurring beyond just the school day. That's my update.
Okay, thank you. And what I wanted to sort of go over right now is what the report looked like and how we can sort of adapt it to an outline that we can come up with today to start moving to update some of the information from that report in hopes of finalizing something within the next couple of months. So looking at the outline with the draft report, you find that there is an introduction and an executive summary. Obviously, we can update that from our perspective here at the Department of State and talk about what the commission has done since this report was drafted, the meetings, and the changing of the board members, and the different committee structure that's in place, and things of that nature to get us up to date, while still keeping some of the information from what had transpired prior to 2010. The other thing that I thought that we could work on and update is what the deliverables actually are at this particular time. And you'll see in the report that it was there's 3 main charges of the commission, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. I'm just going to reiterate them. It's just the survey and the catalog of the educational resources that are out there that can be incorporated into the curricula. And I know, Patricia, there has been some changes made to the curricula in K through 12 education because of the change over to the Common Core standards. And I know that you have provided me some of the information of what those changes look like. So we can obviously add those that information into the report as well. The second thing is the roster of individuals, what we talked about just a few minutes ago, and we can talk about what we've already done on the website to accomplish that task, but also what we're planning to do in terms of the form. That was a great suggestion by Maria, to make sure that we are being responsive to that deliverable. And then, as you know, the last thing is to prepare reports to the governor and legislature about recommendations and finding about the inclusion of the African American experience in our educational system in the state. And you will see in the report there have been some recommendations made, and we might want to revisit those to make sure that they are still something that things that are relevant and things that we may want to add based upon the time frame that has gone by. Now, what Patricia was saying that we may have an issue with is the bibliography that was developed, and there was also mention of a biographical dictionary that seemed to have been worked on, and also the district and student survey that we see the results of in the draft report, but don't have any other background with regard to who that information went to, and the actual questions. I know some of the questions are involved in there, and sort of what the commission did or plans to do with the information that was in that as a result of that survey. And I know that I did ask SED to provide any information with regard to anything that might have been done in response to the survey. And as Patricia just said, that those files regarding the survey are not retrievable due to the retirement of the person that was in charge at the time and an inability to access information from on the computer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I think there are, based upon where we are now, unless the commission members have other suggestions, what I think we can talk about in a report is definitely the development of the website and the use of that website by the public and the plans for that website, the actual curriculum changes that have occurred with regard to Common Core and the infusion of the African American experience more in the curricula, given those standards that have been changed, and also a report about what the commission has done since inception, including meetings and structure changes in terms of subcommittees since the 2010 report. And the last component of the report would be any findings or recommendations that the commission wants to either keep from the last report or any additional recommendations that the commission members may want to work on while we're sort of putting together a draft of this report here at the Department of State with the help of the State Education Department. So that's sort of the plan that we're looking into those areas. Does any commission member have any suggestions or comments in relation to sort of the plan to start to get something written and to get a draft over to the commission for review relatively soon?
I guess I have a question. This is Sylvia. I wanted to know how did you want us to, each individual board member, to review this commission final report and write something, or did you want us to take a section of it and collaborate with each other and review and update? I'm not certain what would be the best way for us to help the state?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now, the bulk of the work in the writing will be done by the Department of State and State Ed. In those categories that I mentioned, the development of the website, the curriculum changes that have been made, and also a write-up of the what has transpired with the board since 2010, including changes to subcommittees and members that are on the board. So like an executive summary type of of piece. So, and I think so we can come together and produce a draft based upon those items. What I would need the board members to help with is the findings and recommendations that are currently in the draft report, review of those, and a determination whether they are still relevant, given that what has transpired since this report, or any additional recommendations findings or recommendations that could be added to the report based upon the information in the report and also the work of the board of the commission since this report was drafted. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yes, it's clear. Okay. So could just one question about the survey that's missing because we don't have the former board's password and all of that. So that sounds like that's a real treasure chest of valuable information that would be very helpful to us. And I'm just wondering if it is possible that the state could do another survey. Would they be able to do that? I mean, was that something that they had to budget for, or?
I would defer to Patricia on that because it was actually conducted by State Education Department.
Oh, okay.
And on that one, I would have to delve into the records to see how it was done and whether or not there was any funds devoted to it. It appeared, from what I could locate, that it was done through our Survey Monkey. But I'd have to research that, and I certainly could. But that could become a recommendation if you want to, in terms of to redo it.
Right, because that would be my first recommendation. Why don't we do a quick Survey Monkey? And because I think we one of our first meetings way back when we first started, we did want to know, well, what of all of the teachers that we knew in our lives, just think about all of your teacher friends and say, well, and you ask them, well, how do you teach Black history? How is it done? And most of them say, oh, we only have this 40-minute module that we bring out at Black History Month, and that's all we do. And then some schools are a little bit more enlightened that they have this, what they call infusion, where it's already in the curriculum, built into it, where they have books and lessons throughout the year so that it's not a separate education. So it would be, I think it would be helpful for the board if we could do another survey. That would be just my recommendation.
Okay. And that certainly can be something that we add to the report with regard to the recommendations. I guess the point that I want to stress is that we start to put the report together with regard to where we are now, and if there's additional work that the board wants to do, I believe that the best course of action is to put it into a recommendation section or the findings section as sort of kind of doing work now to put into a report would obviously delay any report being written. And so if there are other recommendations that you feel the board, the commission should be working on or work towards in the future, I would recommend that be part of the recommendation section of a report that we're trying to get together. Does anyone have any comments or suggestions?
Well, I have to comment about the funding part. I'm looking at page 22 of the report that we have from the final report. So are you
Yes.
asking us, this current board, to develop a new budget? And what? Because that looks like to me that could be revised, and some of the items could be revised, and some of the goals could be revised. Or do you want us as board members to come up with a revised funding budget for whatever our recommendations are? For instance, if we want to do that, the Freedom Trail that Nuria mentioned in other 6 to 12 counties, should we get the budget, find out what the budget would be for that and put that in this so that the state could see what it would take to do all the things we recommend that they do?
Yes, and I think that would
Yes?
be a
Okay.
recommendation from the commission.
Okay.
I don't necessarily believe that it should be a component of the actual report itself.
Okay.
Because I do believe that is something that will need to go before the governor and the legislature, because they're the ones that are, would
We'll
fund
decide on
anything
whether
that
we do
have.
that.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
I believe it's best to put that in as a recommendation, or with a draft of or estimate of what the commission believes would be appropriate to accomplish something
Okay.
of that nature.
Okay, what the whatever the recommendation would be, we'd attach the budget to it or whatever it is.
Yes.
For instance, we know the New Jersey Amistad Commission has a budget of $2 million.
Wow.
We know what the other states have for their budget to just operate, to do
Yes.
their day-to-day business. Okay.
Yes.
How much is the budget for New Jersey?
Well, last that I checked, it was $2 million. I think it's gone up though.
Wow.
Yeah, they have a full-time staff and assistants, and
All right.
that's what I said. We could joke about that governor all we want, but he supports it big time.
Right. They figured it out. Okay.
Yeah, they figured it out. Yeah.
So is that something that the board members that are here, should we sort of break up the recommendations or think about categories that board members could work on between now and the next meeting? Because I would like to have the next meeting next month, so that we are moving forward on finishing the report, hopefully by the end of the year. So I am proposing that the next meeting will be sometime in November. But is there any recommendations from any commission members about how to accomplish sort of making the recommendations and writing them up? I'm sorry.
Hello?
Yes?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I have a
Nuria.
little bit of a bad connection. I can't quite hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Yes.
Nuria.
Okay. Well, my recommendation would be that we generate the recommendations at the subcommittee level.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Way everyone, the subcommittee, your co-commissioners and your colleagues on your subcommittee, which is where we have been placed all along, will give us a chance to further collaborate kind of around our specific areas. And then if committee chairs or co-chairs want to cross-reference with other committee co-chairs or send links or whatever, or documents back and forth to make sure that things are aligned, we could do that. I think in terms of the generation of the actual recommendations, we should work at subcommittee level.
Great. That's a great suggestion.
That's a great.
We do have a couple of changes to our membership. For instance, the
Right, we
website
need a
redesign, I believe, is fine. All the members are still here for that. The educational cultural resources, I think again we're good. All of those members are on there. But the educator input, Lisa Catalfamo is no longer a board member, and we do have a new board member, Jeffrey Prime. and maybe Tamu is not on the.
He said he's on the line. Jeffrey's
Oh,
on
you
the line.
are. Okay. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you?
We didn't know.
I'm sorry.
I know you guys have been going since 10:30. I didn't want to interrupt. I have my phone on mute, but I've been listening.
Oh,
Oh,
great.
wonderful. Can we place you on the Educator Input Committee to replace a member that is no longer on the commission?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So could we have a review of what that committee is doing or is charged with? I can't remember.
The Educator Input?
Yes, I don't recall. I think it
Okay.
was for people who are teachers.
Yeah, it will seek educational professionals' input on what is currently available and what is needed to do their part in imparting Amistad-related information.
Okay.
It's sort of related to the roster of individuals and the collection of resources that are already out there.
Okay.
The title was the Educating Input Committee?
Educator Input. And what I'll do is in your packets,
Okay.
I will send around another description of each committee and who's on each committee
Okay.
before the end of today. And
Okay.
I would ask that the committee members, I do want to have our next meeting in November, and I hope that, I know we're getting towards the holiday time, which is, I'm sure, a busy time for all of us, but to at least have the subcommittee members meet or communicate somehow in terms of what might be appropriate recommendations for the report. And in the meantime, our staff here at the Department of State and working with State Education, we will be drafting a report to be presented at the next meeting. Does that sound okay?
Yes. I'm sorry, did you already say the date of the next meeting?
No, I actually can propose that right now. I'm looking at Thursday, November 20th at 10:30. Does anybody have any objections to that, or?
No, not yet. Not that I know.
That'll do.
Wonderful. So that'll be the date of our next meeting. And I also wanted to try to schedule a meeting for December as well before we get into the deep in the holiday season. And we may, depending on our November 20th meeting, we may not need it, but how does Thursday, December 11th work?
Yeah. At 10:30?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So that will be the next 2 dates of our meetings. We'll obviously send out information and agendas and things of that nature as the time comes. But I do want to thank you for attending today. I think given the time period that has transpired, we have been pretty productive and have come up with some great ideas and a game plan to, finally get something published by the commission to show, the public and, the residents of the state of New York that this commission is serious about the work and that obviously we believe it's an important aspect of our experience here in New York and as a community. So is there anything else that anyone needs to add or comment on?
Yes, this is Miriam speaking.
Yes.
I just want to take a very brief moment and say to everyone that today, October 16th, is the 19th anniversary of the National Day of Atonement, Reconciliation, and Responsibility, which was also known popularly as the Million Man March.
Oh,
This is one of the largest and most significant events in the context of African American history in this country. I know that the event was shrouded in a lot of controversy based on who the convener was, etc. But separate and apart from that, I just think that we cannot in good conscience be on the phone talking about African American history on today and not at least acknowledge that today is the anniversary day of the Million Man March. So happy Million Man March Day to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's just Brian again. I know I'm a new guy, but is 10:30 the best time for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, understood.
Is that not working for you, Jeffrey?
No, just such that my schedule is such that usually I'm in the court in mornings.
Okay.
But I totally understand if everyone's schedule is that is the best time.
Okay, is there just, for future reference, is there a time that's better for you?
Usually in the afternoons, I'm out of court.
Afternoons, like after 12 noon?
Yeah, usually about, like 2 o'clock, but certainly 12, 1 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if there's nothing else, I would like to call this meeting as adjourned at 11:43 a.m. We will be in touch with you